and they're two adult, fine, upstanding police officers, and I'm a juvenile, delinquent, scummy little criminal.
So you were actually interviewed around 4 times by the police, is that right? What was going through your mind at that time as a young boy? How did it feel to be questioned like that? Were you scared? Were you scared of what would happen?
Not initially, no, because it wasn't really an issue. It was just a matter of them going around interviewing everybody in the area within a certain age, and I didn't really have a problem with that. I didn't particularly trust the police or want to be around them, but I didn't have a problem with it either. It was only the third and fourth interviews with the 2 police officers who arrested me, there was ever a problem. And the third interview, they were very aggressive and very abusive, and were trying to basically stop me going out on leave that night. And but they were actually questioning me more about my brother than about myself. And just kept going and going and going until eventually I broke down crying and told them basically what they wanted to know, which was wrong anyway.
Yeah, so
the information that they were actually after about my brother, I didn't have, I didn't know.
So the confession you actually made, it literally came about because you were that much under pressure, the way that they were
Well, that was the
questioning
third interview. The fourth interview was following pretty much the same lines, but the police had actually gone back and re-interviewed people involved in a previous offence and basically manufactured statements to say that it was actually me that had committed that offence and not somebody else, and were then threatening to charge me with attempted murder for that offence if I didn't confess to this one. And they were being very threatening and bullying me, and they took my shoes off me before I went in the room. And
why did they do that?
Because it makes you feel vulnerable.
You think that was why, just to sort of...
I know it's why. I learned a lot from them over them 25 years about how to get to people, and how they work. They work on your emotions. It's not just physical. They work on your vulnerabilities.
Now, I know that an actual written confession was sort of created. I've sort of read lots of times that people don't believe that the language that was used basically in the confession was very untypical of a 14-year-old boy or a 15-year-old boy by that point. Who do you think created that confession? If it wasn't you that wrote this confession, do you have any ideas as to what was behind that?
The police were suggesting to me what to write, and were helping me with it. And if I got a fact wrong, because they were actually talking with me all the time, and leading up to that, they were actually shouting at me details of the offence, saying you did this, then you did this, then you did this.
So the profile of the person that the police were actually looking for at the time was somebody with red curly hair, was that right?
Yeah.
Slightly older than you.
Yeah.
Do you feel in any way that you matched the profile of the attacker? Why do you think they selected you to come and be sort of interviewed in the first place?
I think the description in general was, at that time, sort of like, your typical teenager, but not, obviously not someone as young as I was. They were actually, as far as I'm aware, looking for someone, quite a bit older, and I didn't really fit the physical description whatsoever.
And I know that you actually had just maybe coincidentally, you had your hair cut a couple of times.
No, I didn't.
Around that time. Did that not ever happen?
Yeah, it happened, but it wasn't around that time.
Oh, okay, so that was before.
Yeah, because they were trying to say that I'd had my hair cut in response to reports in some of the newspapers. But, I was locked up and, I didn't get these newspapers, and, I didn't read them then, and I don't read them now. The only reason I initially ever knew anything about it is because me and a friend was round in that area the next day, and of course walked into a long line of police searching in that area. And that was the first thing I'd ever heard about it and knew about it. But then they even put that down to being having an unnatural interest in the crime. Okay. But there was somebody else with me at the time when I walked there.
Yeah.
So that actually, that's a proven fact. But there's lots of little things like that they were bringing up to actually try and build some sort of case against me specifically. But before that, they'd arrested my brother, and you know, they tried to do exactly the same thing to him, and you know, forced him into confessing, and you know, eventually told him that when they had to release him, that it didn't matter which one of us they got, but they'd get one of us.
Okay.
You know, and then they came for me.
Why do you think it was out of you and your brother? Why do you think it was you that they actually convicted?
I have no idea. No idea. I mean, my brother was still at home, so, you know, he had my elder brother and my mother to come down and look after him, and there wasn't anyone there to look after me.
How did your brother react when you were convicted? Did he
no
realise
idea.
how close he had been, obviously?
I have no idea. Never saw them again.
You never saw your brother again?
No.
Why did that happen?
I never saw most of my family ever again.
So your family, I'm guessing, did they presume that you were guilty?
Yeah, I guess they did.
How did that make you feel?
I just closed down completely and utterly. Really, really closed down, especially emotionally. I didn't really understand a lot of what was going on. Nothing was really ever explained to me. All the time was, you know, basically me on my own, and not having any real idea of what was going on and how to deal with it.
Did you ever try and get into contact with your family, or did they at all try and contact you while you were in prison, or was there just...
No, not really. I mean, when my probation officer used to come up, they used to bring like my mother up and that, because she couldn't really say no if she was being brought up. But there was certainly no emotional contact there ever again.
Really?
And, you know, I never saw her again, you know, pretty much after a couple of years after going into prison.
So I know that your brother was sort of encouraged to make a confession as such. There were 3 confessions altogether,
Yeah.
is that correct?
Yeah.
So why do you think it was you again that was against the other 2 apart from your brother? Have you got any ideas why it was you?
I don't really know. I mean, because I don't really know anything about these other statements and why they came about. I mean, it was actually 15 years before I even knew the evidence against me in court.
Oh, really?
Because I was never given any paperwork. I was never told what was going on or what was happening or anything else. You know, so it was only over time that I found a lot of things out. But I think they were under pressure to find somebody, and they decided they were going to get somebody. And I can only speak specifically about the 2 police officers who arrested me, and the same 2 who my brother supposedly confessed to eventually at midnight after being in the police station for hours and hours and hours. And I can only think that they decided that they were going to get somebody, and they'd found their perfect target as far as they were concerned.
So your brother obviously didn't contact you. He believed that you were guilty. Did you ever have any suspicions about your brother? Did you ever think the same about him, that...
No.
Do you ever think he could have been capable of it
No.
either?
No.
And if he'd have gone into jail, how do you think that you would have reacted?
I'd have said the same thing. I know exactly where he was. He was sat in the same house I was sat in.
So there was no doubt in your mind?
No.
So even though he doubted you...
I don't know whether he ever did. I have no idea
whether
whether he ever did.
you.
No, we weren't we weren't a close family. We didn't talk to each other. We didn't touch each other. We didn't care for each other. You know, my mother was an extremely cold person. My father was a violent alcoholic, and we grew up with like the emotions of basically of a house brick, which was non-existent.
Sure.
You know, so it was very, very difficult to actually talk to each other and speak to each other anyway. We didn't talk.